That we have it. So once again, welcome to this live session of TDC Cinema. We're all under this coronavirus lockdown, global lockdown, and this is has changed our lives. And but also, at least we have this occasion of getting together online. And I want to thank big time Matyas Erdely for being here. And he's a amazing cinematographer, a member of the Hungarian Society of Cinematographers, a long friend of TDC Cinema. I was at TDC Cinema in 2016. Hi, Matyas.
Hello, Vincenzo.
And I take the chance, I always say it, and I take the chance once again to say that Matyas gave a very important feedback to TDC Cinema because it was his idea precisely to shift on film, basically, to make TDC Cinema into a film-based campus and experience. And it started from him, then he actively collaborated to make this happen. It did happen, and we're very happy that it happened. And by now we know that we wouldn't do it if we didn't have the chance of shooting on film. So shooting on film, film culture, what it is to shoot film these days is going to be a big part of this talk. For those who are interested in what is happening to TDC Cinema, I say it now, we will postpone dates. It's basically impossible to make it happen in September for obvious reasons. And the dates will be published after this chat, but I can tell you it's going to be March 2021. So same formula, same spirit, just in a different time of the year. Now, I would start with Matyas, this talk, by, of course, we start from Son of Soul. Matyas, I wanted to ask you, this movie was your first movie with director Laszlo Nemes. Can you tell us about how you got together in this?
What happened was that between 2003 and 2005, I attended AFI in Los Angeles, American Film Institute. And while I was there, a good friend of mine in Hungary, Bálint Kenyeres, was prepping a short film called Before Dawn. And during the summer break, I was back in Hungary, and I ended up shooting Before Dawn with Bálint. And Laszlo was there as Bálint's assistant, first AD. And that's where we met. And then after finishing AFI, I moved back to Hungary in 2006. And Laszlo had a short film that he wanted to do, which is called With the Patients, which ended up being a study for Son of Soul. Something I didn't know back then, but now it's obvious that it was something that he already was planning in his mind. And that short film is basically, the whole film is one take, one shot. It's a continuous shot that is using or experimenting similar ideas, visual ideas that we utilized in Son of Soul. And after that first initial short, we did another 2 short films together. All of those were shot on 35. And when Laszlo was prepping Son of Soul, we were, already talking about that as a concept, as a visual concept for many, many years, actually. So what was a great thing is that we use these 3 short films to kind of experiment with different ways of storytelling, different visual ideas, even different lenses and film stocks and ways of development and all of this. So we kind of grew together as filmmakers, and I think that's extremely useful, and it's really a beautiful thing to have, because all your references that you build up together throughout the years, and all the mistakes, all the problems, all the issues, all the discussions you have, all of this goes into something that's common between you and the director. So it's been an amazing journey with him. It took almost like 8 years, right, from our first short film together to Son of Saul, and then after Son of Saul we made another film called Sunset, which came out 3 years ago, if I'm correct. So yeah, that was the process. So first I met him as an AD, and then he became a really, really good friend and a great source of inspiration throughout the years.
Nice. And I mean, Son of Saul came out, I think, in 2016 or 15.
15, I think,
and
yeah.
16 won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Pictures. Now help me with my memory. I think it won the Golden Globe, and it won other. Was it in Cannes? Premiered in Cannes.
Something. I think it won something in Cannes as well, no?
Yeah, I mean, it was premiered in Cannes, in the main competition, and won Prix de Jury.
Yeah.
And then the whole craziness started, basically. Like
that was the first thing.
That was the first thing. That was the premiere. Cannes was the premiere.
So in this sense, what I think it's interesting for us, but also for our friends who are online now, those who've been at Terre di Cinema, those who are interested in joining the program, is the fact that you basically work together, you come together, you teamed up with a director who was at his debut film, and you guys decided to go for film instead of maybe, I don't know, going for, I'll say, easier in terms of production values, not values in terms of to convince producers or, financiers to shoot, I don't know, digital. So it's very interesting that for what I know, I remember us talking, you guys made it clear. Can you tell us something about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't want to talk for Laszlo, but as far as I know, he wouldn't shoot anything on digital. I think it's a matter of aesthetics. It's a matter of workflow. I think he really, really enjoys what he sees on the screen when we are shooting on film. I just had a quick flash of memory when we had our first dailies from Son of Saul. We were in the screening room and we were projecting 35mm dailies, and I remember looking at him and how extremely excited he was watching the screen. And it has an amazing impact on you. Like watching film projected, I think it's still, to me, it still cannot be matched by any other means. So for me, digital projection never gives that feeling of cinema. And I want to get into this, too deeply, but again, I think it's mainly about aesthetics. And if you consider what you do art, then art is not just content, but it's also form. So if you look at a painting, of course it's a painting of a bouquet of flowers, but what matters is okay, there was a canvas and there was paint, and there are these three-dimensional ways the paint dries on the canvas and all this. So it's Laszlo is a director who is extremely passionate about this, and obviously I count myself as someone extremely passionate about this as well. And it was the one thing that was very interesting, that Son of Saul was Laszlo's first feature film, and he made it. We should also note that the budget for this wasn't high by all means. It was, back then it was probably less than an average Hungarian feature, if I remember correctly. So yeah, there were movies being made for much more money during those years. But he made it very, very clear from the get-go that he would only shoot this on film. And he even said that he wouldn't shoot this unless he can shoot it on 35. So that was an amazing way to start the conversation with the producers, because first I think they were a little bit worried, and then they were a little bit concerned about the costs. But you know, once you put the numbers down, you realize that it's doable, and it's a decision. And if the director and the DP make this decision and understand what it means financially, then it's fine. You know, you just have to stick to those numbers, and you're fine. Actually, we finished the film under budget, so we used actually less film than we asked for, and we were actually under budget.
What would be the difference in costs, roughly in a percentage, like 10% more, 20%?
I honestly don't know. But I know that if you shoot digital, you can go crazy with the numbers. I mean, you can say, okay, I want an Alexa LF with these lenses, and I want a DIT, and I want a, you know, whatever, and I need a data wrangler, and I want a DIT, and, you know, the backups and all this. Yeah, I mean, it can get out of hand extremely easily. And don't forget the fact that when you're shooting digital, you tend to roll more. I mean, you just tend to shoot more stuff, and then you end up with hours and hours of, you know, RERO or whatever that takes up, you know, teraflops of data at the end of and then you have to, you know, you have to archive that, you have to, you know, manage all of the data. When you shoot film, at least in my experience, you tend to, first of all, you tend to do rehearsals, which I think is something I consider extremely useful for actors, for crew, for everybody. And you tend to cut the camera when the camera needs to be cut. So you just end up with less material. And I think, but again, I'm not an editor, but I would think that it's actually helping the editors, because it's not like an unlimited amount of footage they have to go through. You know, every scene, every shot has a certain amount of takes, and those are the takes. And it's not like we press record in the morning and we don't cut the camera until, you know, very late in the evening. So I don't know, it's a workflow that I truly enjoy, and Laszlo truly enjoys.
Okay, just a second. I want to say hi to Rafik and asking him to switch his sound off. Then we'll have a chance for all of you to intervene, guys. And then I see there is also Enzo, which I believe is from Italy, and Mararita. Sorry for my pronunciation. Guys, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, we'll all have a chance. You guys will have a chance to make a question to Matyas. We have just started, so I'll give you the time when it's the time for the questions, and we'll proceed like this. One last thing I wanted to ask about Son of Soul, Matyas, and then we can see the diagram that we already know from the previous time at TDC Cinema, that illustrates the workflow that you had for Son of Soul. I think it's interesting. I also remember the short film that you mentioned, because we saw it at TDC Cinema when you were there, and it was really, really interesting to see it as a part of the process that led you then to such a great film. What I wanted to ask you about the Son of Soul regards the aspect ratio and the use of depth of field, which I find extremely interesting. Extremely. Also, I would say, for what I remember of the film, I've seen it years ago, there was a sort of decency in you, and I've noticed also in Sunset, in your way of shooting, of course, and the director's one, you know, not to be in a way too graphic, if you want, to have these things in the shallow depth of field, very powerful, even if you're not seeing exactly what is happening there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both of these, I should say, tools were used for one purpose, and the purpose was to maintain full control over visual information. So if you look at the aspect ratio we used, which is called Academy, which is 1 to 1.37, it's almost like a portrait. So basically, if you're using it almost like in portraiture photography, and we thought that this film is a portrait of Saul, and we thought that how would you photograph a face, and what format would you use to photograph a face? And this was the closest to something we could do photochemically, to a almost square format. And then the question we asked ourselves is this format going to be limiting? Meaning, are we taking too much information out of the images, not showing backgrounds? And then what we did a lot of tests. We did a lot of tests on 35 to see how is this going to work. And once the camera started to move, we realized that the little space around the face was enough to show enough information. And actually the limitations helped us to, again, control the amount of information we are giving to the audience at a given moment. So it turned out, so it started more like an aesthetical decision, meaning what is the form that is best for a portrait. But it also became a great tool to limit the visual information we are giving the audience. So it served two purposes. The other part of your question was regarding depth of field, which was another, very similarly, which was also a tool we used to limit visual information. And because you cannot really quantify autofocusness, right? We started to talk about it, but soon realized that we again have to do tests to actually determine, first of all, the focal length of the lens we want to use, then the brand of the lens we want to use, then the depth of field we want to use, also the distance we want to use. So it was made up of at least 4 different elements, this decision. So we did a lot of tests with different brands of lenses, and then different stops to see, and different object distances to see what is an image that is still readable, but it's not too graphic, as you said. And that, you know, we kind of went, oh, this is a little bit too much, oh, this is not enough. And then we kind of found this sweet spot where we felt, okay, these images give you enough visual information to understand the story, something that is not too enigmatic, but also it doesn't give you too much. So it doesn't, we never wanted to fall into the trap of trying to illustrate the Holocaust, which you can't. So it was almost like we are giving you an image, and then your mind has to fill in the gaps. And that work that you do with your imagination was part of the viewing experience for the audience.
I find this brilliant, really. You know, I just uploaded a still shot of taken from internet, so I don't know exactly the origin of it, but it was online, a bit illustrating what you were saying. Now we also have Faizan, who's joined us. Welcome, Faizan. I would say before we go into looking what we were saying before, the workflow. So we've talked about production, pre-production, production. As it comes to production, the actual shooting. Also, you mentioned the lensing. There is
Yeah, but Vince,
yes.
on the same topic that he just talked about, can you just tell us like what lenses and that kind of, on that same topic?
Yeah, absolutely. We tested quite a few different things. We knew that this film is spherical, so that was something that was fairly easy to decide. And then, you know, the question was, do we go towards a route that is using vintage lenses to kind of deconstruct the image and create an image that has a little bit more flavor? We shot with some vintage lenses, and they never felt right. They never felt right because they forced an aesthetic on the images that already felt forced. Like, why are we creating these images that are, let me try to find the right words. Like, we didn't want to create images that were pretty. That was very, very important for us. We were hoping to do something that's, you know, this is an overused expression, but I guess we can use it in this context, which is like almost documentary. Like, let's create something that doesn't feel I don't know if it's a word, aesthetized, if that is a word. It's not, that doesn't feel forced on the viewers. Oh, look at this pretty image. This is meant to touch your soul. You know, like that was very important. And the more we tested, we've realized that actually what we want is a lens that is extremely precise, and it's almost without any. Hello.
Yes, I'm listening.
No, I'm just looking at myself like.
Hi.
Yeah. So no. So we wanted to find a set of lenses that were extremely clear and clean, and without any visual flavor, if you should say that. And we ended up shooting with the Zeiss Master Primes, which for me are the cleanest and most precise lenses, which was really interesting. The using of those lenses with the combination of film turned out to be a really, really beautiful combination. So those were the lenses we used.
That's funny when you were saying about. I was thinking that was the one you were going to do. I find them the most characterless lenses.
Well, they have a character, but the character they have is a character of precision. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how to say this. They are very, very interesting lenses.
They're very, very German lenses. You can tell there is a feeling like, you know, like Cook are British.
And you shot it open, or
but
the depth of field discussion?
Excuse me?
On the depth of field stuff, you were saying you were shooting quite wide open then, or?
We were shooting around 2.8.5 in the exteriors, and shooting around, I think it was around 2.5 in the interiors. Yeah.
So
I can, if you want, I can check it extremely precisely because I have it written.
Roughly,
it's an interesting point. I believe you kept it consistent throughout. Of course, it has very strong. For me, it's just brilliant the way it really. You reminded me of what Giuseppe Rotunno, is one of our greatest cinematographers in Italy, once said. He said, "There is no beautiful cinematography. There is either cinematography that works or cinematography that doesn't work for the project," and that's true. You can't make a film about Holocaust and make it look like it's a beautiful piece, because it's the most horrible thing that ever.
But on the topic of the stops, you know, it's from the point of view of a craft, it's a very elegant thing from the point of view of the camera side, not someone who's watching, but to have a consistent stop throughout, a scene, or to give us, that's part of the consistency thing, I guess.
Yeah. Actually, I have my notes. So it was 2.5 in the exteriors and 2 in the interiors. So wide open. No, not wide open. One step down.
One stop down.
Consistency, I think, is something that is not necessarily for every project, because there are projects that would actually require you to do different visual approaches for different segments of a film. But like the films that I did, I should say my last 3 features, I made the decision to shoot all of them on the same stock. So all 3 were shot on film, and all 3 were shot on one stock. And I use this stock, it's a high-speed stock, it's the 500T, and I use this stock in the exterior, in night exterior, so for every scene. And I actually love the fact that it's consistent. So the grain is consistent, the contrast is consistent, the saturation is consistent.
You're talking about
Son of Soul, Sunset, and The Nest. All three projects were shot using only one stock. And of course, if you scan or whatever, you can play with these things. You can play with contrast. You can play with saturation. But for example, Vincenzo was mentioning this workflow chart. We're gonna look at that. But the idea for Son of Soul was to go with a full-on photochemical finish. So it was basically, the film was shot and developed, and then the negative was cut, and then the negative was printed as you would have done it 100 years ago. That was the original concept, to keep it very pure and to keep it very clean. And it worked really, really well. So when you are dealing with a photochemical finish, you know what your tools will allow you to do, and you know that you won't be able to control contrast, or to control contrast, your tools are much more limited. Let me just say that. The control of saturation, again, it's extremely limited, and the control of your grain is also extremely limited. So the tools you have in a DI would give you much more tools. So if you look at the workflow chart, on the top, all the white squares show you the straight, clean photochemical version. And then obviously we had to deliver a digital master, and we had to do DCPs. You can see how it was created. What was really interesting, that for Son of Soul, we had to stop striking prints from the original camera negative, because we did more than 20 or something like that. So we decided to create a new negative from the digital master. And if you go, it says digital color grade for internegative, and then there's a 4K RE laser transfer. And that what the RE laser transfer to a new negative, we basically created this clone negative. So it's not the original camera negative, but it is a new negative. And then we created more prints from this new negative. We can go through step by step, Vincenzo, if you want to. I mean, it's
yes, and then we'll make space for the questions from our friends who are attending online. I wanted, regarding photochemical, my point is that basically nowadays everything looks the same, because you can't operate on the grain, right? You can't operate on the pull and push, or push and pull in the time in the lab. What do you think about this? What do you think about
I mean, what is amazing with film is that it's almost like cooking in a way, because you pick your ingredients, and then with those ingredients, you have unlimited variations. Like, okay, I'm going to pick this stock, but I'm going to expose it in a certain way. And then I'm going to develop it in a certain way. And I'm going to light it in a certain way. That is already giving me unlimited versions of the same image.
Unlimited.
And then the grade comes in, and then obviously you can use filtration and all that, which you can also use with digital. But the image characteristics that are inherent to what you do is determined by choices. The choice of stock, the choice of exposure, the choice of development. Every lab creates a little bit different contrast. You can, of course, you can get in there and adjust that. So basically you can fine tune an image in unlimited ways. In contrast to shooting an Alexa, you can shoot that Alexa in Delhi and it's the same chip that I would be using in Budapest or in Los Angeles or wherever. So the image characteristics you are using are the same in the whole world, wherever wherever you are, because you're using the same chip. Of course, there is a Sony Venice and there is a Red or whatever. I still feel the way you can fine tune an image and create an image when you're shooting film gives you infinite options.
Yes, that's precisely what I meant. It's like that, of course, we could say in not very technical terms that in film, the look is baked in the emulsion, right? In the way you expose for it. And in digital, this becomes less and less the case, especially when you get now to whatever HDR and this and that. So it's very essential difference, and it should be emphasized as much as it is important for the final outcome. Films did look all different back in the time when you had the choice between two stocks. Now you have the choice between like 10 cameras, and film looks all they look all the same. This weekend.
And what is also I find very, very beautiful when you're working with film is that you make these choices, and all these choices are something that you think about. It's not like, okay, we're gonna shoot RE raw and we're gonna underexpose like hell, and we're gonna be shooting 1600 ASA, and then I just feel that you basically acquire data that you then you create in post. Obviously this is exaggerating, and don't get me wrong, I'm also shooting digital, and sometimes I really love shooting digital and all of that. I just feel that when you're working on a movie similar to Son of Saul, you spend years talking about what the image should be, and then you make choices, and then you basically come up with a recipe and say, okay, this is my film and this is how it's going to look, and then you stick to it, and then you have something that is very consistent and it's decided, it cannot be changed. Like that is, I love the fact that I expose it in a way and that's it. Of course you can grade it, and you can do certain things with it, but you made these decisions, and they, as you said, they are baked into the image.
Yeah. So first of all, sorry for a second, I want to welcome, there have been other people joining us. We have 20 people now online. I see Monisha Dayal, welcome. Then I see Monisha. We'll have the chance for you to ask Mariam. Mariam could be from Turkey, maybe, I guess, by the name. Then there is Maria Lombardo from Sicily. Hi, Maria. And sorry if I'm, and Jojo Lam. Very happy to see you, Jojo. Jojo was at TDC Cinema in 2017, I believe. And she's now attending the master at American Film Institute. So I'm very happy to see her, even at distance. So we, guys, for the latecomers, we had started this and we opened it to everybody because we had some issues on Facebook, maybe overcrowded. we're discussing Matyas' career and keeping the focus on shooting on film. I have to ask those who are not talking to mute their mic because I'm getting some return in the sound. We've talked about Son of Soul and the collaboration between Matyas and Laszlo Nemes, their first collaboration. Now I'd like to open for you, if you have any questions, please switch on the mic and switch on also your camera so we can see you, okay? Who wants to ask anything about what we've just discussed?
I can ask something. If you can just talk about the look of the film, the look of Son of Saul, how you worked with the director and to achieve that look, and how much of that was in the DI versus vis-a-vis in at the time of shooting. I know that's an obvious question, but
no, it's not an obvious question. If you think back to what we just discussed, it wasn't a DI. It was a straight on photochemical finish. So the look was basically based on everything that is not based in cinematography in a funny way. The look was to go as clean as possible with the stock, with filtration, with the lenses, and we used the locations, and we used wardrobe and makeup, and obviously lighting to create, again, it's an overused term, but something that is almost like a documentary. I'm not crazy about using this word because it's not true, obviously. It has nothing to do with a documentary, but the idea was to stay away from a so-called look. That was the idea, and the lighting was also extremely simple in many ways, because the idea was to go basically based on practical reasons. Most of our lighting had to be built into the sets. If you remember the movie, most of the time the camera is doing 360 degrees in most of the interior locations. That meant the lighting had to be hidden, and most of the time that meant the lighting had to come from above. So with the help of our amazing action designer Laszlo Rajk, who recently passed away unfortunately, we managed to build in a lot of our lighting into the sets, and the different part of the sets had different approaches in terms of how we lit those areas, but all of our lighting were based on an idea, and the idea was like, how would these places to be lit, like how would they be lit? It wasn't about creating a pleasing image. It was about, it was based in, I don't have better words to use, but it was kind of based in reality. It was based in like, okay, we are standing next to these ovens where they burn the bodies. There will be firelight. So actually we created actual firelight using gas burners, and we also wherever we couldn't, we created electrical light that was mimicking firelight. So that was always our logic, to create lighting that would be based in reality. In parts of the set, where for example you were in the operation room, we were like, okay, so how would this room be lit? So I was like, okay, they must have something above the operating table because they need to see what they're doing. So all of my lighting choices were based in these practical ideas. So the look came from all of these decisions, and they never came from you know, a mindset of aesthetics.
Guys, one thing, if there will be technical problems, because we experienced that yesterday on another session, I will repost the link. I will start again and I will repost the link on Facebook. So please check the Facebook page, everyone, in case if we should fall. This is so far very interesting, I think. Thank you, Matyas. And I'd really like to hear from, I think that Shupriyo wants to ask something. So Shupriyo, you have to, I'll do it for you. Shupriyo from India, as we were saying, from Delhi, who was at TDC Cinema in 2017. You have to unmute your mic, Shupriyo.
Yeah, I did. Just wanted to ask, did you use, because you were talking about the lenses, did you in the end up using any, how do you say, filters in front of the lenses, or no filters was also used and you were just using whatever came in through the lens?
I used an 85 to correct for daylight, and I also used an ultra contrast filter and that was the only thing we used, because you know, during these tests, I felt that to create an image that is a little bit less contrasty felt right. So again, I tested numerous ways to achieve that, you know, with exposure, with development, but I felt that the simplest thing to do would be to use this filter, which is an old filter. I really like it. It just gives you a little bit softer contrast. So that was the only thing we used.
Sorry, can you repeat the filter you used? I couldn't hear.
It's an ultra contrast.
Ultra contrast. Okay.
I think it's Tiffen.
Tiffen. Okay. I also want to say hi to Premananda, who is basically big part of TDC Cinema. You, Matyas, haven't met him yet. He's part of the staff. Hi, Prema. Good to see you online from Sicily. And thanks, Shupriyo, for your question. Any other questions, guys? If so, switch on your camera and your mic, or write it in the chat. Jojo, say something. I haven't seen you for a long time. Are you there? Oh, Tur, okay. Please go ahead.
Tur needs a focus puller.
Tur, you need to...
Apologies for my camera. It's from 2000.
Are you from Tur? Sorry, I couldn't hear. Belgium, you said?
Yeah, and studying in Prague at the moment.
Oh, hi. Hi, welcome.
So I found I discovered shooting on film in this. Now I'm sitting at FAMU, but I'm curious about shooting, for example, the match and the scene. How to, for example, lighting and shooting the match to get the right colors and create an atmosphere, lighting-wise. In Son of Saul, for example, if you did mostly in camera, or is it like post? How the candlelight has like the orange color and how it like connects in the atmosphere.
I'm trying to understand this question precisely. So you're asking about color, or you're asking about what I'm sorry, I just couldn't hear really well.
Yeah, sorry for in the scene with the in the shot. I'm curious, like if you shoot the match in the scene and lighting that scene to get like a consistent atmosphere, because I'm always curious if the match would shift to a different color when you shoot it on film, for example. Sorry if it's
no, I'm just trying to. I'm very cute. I just want to be very precise with answering the question. So if I understand you correctly, your question is regarding the color of the firelight and how to match that with movie lights. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think I really worried that much to match it precisely, because I had this idea that I never wanted this film to look clean in terms of color. I have this, I don't know, I like when colors mix, and when none of the colors are precise, and I love to mix different color temperatures to create this in between mixed dirty colors. And especially for a film like this, meaning Son of Saul, I felt that it should never feel pleasing, you know, like it should never feel clean, it should never feel nice to look at. So I actually, in many cases, we mix different color temperatures in one image to get this effect. And the specific moment that you're talking about, when we see the color of the flame and then the rest of the image, I mean, we use a lot of tungsten light for night interior. So basically all of our night interiors were lit by tungsten. And actually, if I think about the film, I don't know if we used HMIs. I don't think we used any HMIs for night. I think all of our nights were tungsten. And with tungsten, what is really beautiful is that, first of all, it gives you a beautiful spectrum. So it's unlike some LEDs, it just gives you a very full spectrum of color. And especially if you're shooting on film, it looks really natural on skin. And what you can also do is that you can dim these lights very easily. And I really love how it just feels, to my eyes, it just feels very, very natural. So basically what you see is a scene that was lit by tungsten that was dimmed down so they go warm. Actually, by dimming them down, you're just, you know, you're not just decreasing the amount of light, but you're also decreasing the color temperature. So it's actually going closer to the color of the flame. So in a way, you end up with an image that is more consistent in color by doing that. I hope I'm answering your question.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
It seems that now the live on Facebook is going. Sorry, again, it didn't depend on us, but I think it's nice to have you with us, guys. And there was another question from Ezra, from Egypt, from Cairo. Ezra, please, you have to unmute your mic and unmute your camera so you can get live.
Hi. Yeah, hi, Matyas. You answered a little bit of my question. I wrote it in the chat, but you just talked about it. Like now everyone is lighting with LED lights. And
not everyone.
It's more, yeah, I know not everyone, but like most, like it's more cheaper, it's more accessible, and a lot of people, especially our generation, we're not really seeing tungsten anymore or HDMIs. And I was wondering about your whole thoughts about shifting from or using tungsten versus using LED in general, and how this works different in digital. And because you can see it in your eyes, and you can see that tungsten is different for a skin look, and for more texture, and even the color temperature is different. But now that you can't ask all producers, or you can't really, if you have to work with what you have, and if this is what you're left with, the LED, especially not having enough experience with tungsten, I only saw people lighting with tungsten as I was a trainee. But now, like your whole thoughts about LED versus tungsten, and how this works differently on digital, and it has a huge effect, of course, on film stock, like how the process
Yeah.
now. And if you have ever worked with LED before.
Yes. Of course. I don't.
Yeah, I know what.
No. I don't have a. I mean, I try to look at every project with a fresh eye. So yes, I do tend to use certain tools because I just love the way they look. But I would never say that tungsten generally better than LEDs, because that's just dumb to say. There are millions of reasons to use LEDs, maybe only LEDs for a project. That's actually the same with digital versus film. I think there are projects that are better shot on digital. I tend to lean towards the projects that are, at least for me, are better to be shot on film, but that's a different thing. I don't think there are like rules like that at all. I like, oh, this is just better than other thing. I mean, there's so many things you can do with a sky panel or with some light ribbons or whatever, and they are amazingly beautiful. What I think is important as a DP is to know your tools. You need to know what a 24K tungsten can do, and you also need to know what a cheap LED can do, because they are good for completely different things. And I think what you want to do is you want to, even if you can't afford it, you just go to a rental house and say, can we please turn this on for me to look at? And then you have those guys turn it on, and then you take a few stills on film or on digital or both, and then you can say, well, okay, this is how it looks, and can I turn on LED and see how it looks in relation to that? And then immediately you have a little bit of understanding. And then maybe on one of the projects that you can say, well, actually sky panels are really expensive. What if I don't use 4 sky panels, but you give me a 24K for one day, and then a generator or whatever, hopefully there's always a way to kind of get the things you want. But it's you can never say that a 24K is a better light than a sky panel. It does completely different things. So for certain projects, for the film Sunset, we only used LEDs for one scene. And the reason we used LEDs for that scene, because we were in a low loader, and it was the most practical, and it was the simplest and easiest way to do it. We are inside a carriage, and it's a 2-shot of 2 characters, and I needed something very soft, but I also needed something that doesn't take up space, because we actually were riding this big thing on streets. So I needed to keep the whole thing small. And for that, the sky panels were great. But I didn't want to use LEDs for anything else, because I felt that the look I'm getting from the tungsten lights that I had was the look that I was after for this given film. On other projects, all I use is LEDs and the digital camera. So it's like, of course, you have to pick your tools, thinking what is best for that project. And that can be based on so many things. But the only thing that is hugely important is to get to know these tools, I think.
Yeah, we can say that it's obvious, but it's true, and it's worth to remind. Every project dictates its own tool, and not the opposite. So when you face productions and producers, guys, I believe it's very important that this is clear in your mind, and you find the way to get this through. Unfortunately, now there is a bit of a tendency of other people from other departments telling which camera should be, which camera shouldn't be. This is a prerogative of cinematographers, because we know the image, and if we want to do our job properly, we know our tools. And I don't think that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, any producer or any other departments would care what kind of stock would be used or what kind of camera. So each camera, if you shoot a sci-fi, And some cameras maybe are even better than film. I don't know. It depends on what kind of look you want to give to it. So I think what Matyas is saying is very important. I just want to add, please mute your mic, guys. What I'm saying is that we can agree also on the fact that tungsten lights has a nice fall off as compared to HMI. I'm not saying as a full truth, but I don't know. I like it to use it also for day interiors, to be honest. And this will lead us to sunset because now we have a few captions and we can discuss your next movie. Matyas, unless there are other questions, guys, for this specific part of our talk that regarded Son of Saul and what we've said so far, any questions, please? If so, switch your camera on and your mic. BJ, okay, I see you raise hand. Please, BJ, switch your camera on and your mic. I believe you are from India, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Hi, BJ. Nice. Welcome.
Hi.
Do we know each other?
Nice to see you again. Yeah, we met before. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Sorry for my bad memory in times of lockdown. Welcome. You are a cameraman, cinematographer?
I'm not a cameraman. I'm a writer, director.
Oh, okay. Okay, Vijay.
And editor.
All right, cool. Please, go ahead.
So, yeah. So, when I saw Son of Saul 3 years back, I thought it was visually stunning. But the first thing that hit me was the fact that, it felt claustrophobic. I think part of that was because of the aspect ratio. My question to Matyas is, what motivated you to go to shoot in that, specific aspect ratio? I believe it's 1.35 something. But yeah, it gave me a claustrophobic feel, and I would like to know the thought process behind choosing, that aspect ratio, if possible.
Sure. I'm very happy that you used the word claustrophobic because that was the goal. If you remember what the protagonist is experiencing, a big part of that is claustrophobia, and the big part of that is not being able to control his own actions. So if you felt claustrophobic, then we achieved something we planned to achieve. I think you might have missed the beginning of this conversation because we did talk about the aspect ratio and the reasons behind it, but I can just quickly follow up. We chose this aspect ratio, which is called Academy, and it's 1.37 to 1, is because we thought about the film as a portrait of a man. And if you think about photography, mainly, I mean, square format is associated with, or can be associated with portraiture in a very simple way. We also use this format to limit the amount of visual information that we are giving to the audience. And only reveal certain visual elements when we want it to be revealed. So by truly limiting and controlling the visual elements, that was the goal.
Okay.
Well, so, I see. That makes sense.
In case, guys, we will post, for those who missed the beginning, we will post, this session is being recorded, and we will post it both on our YouTube channel and Facebook and wherever you can have a look. Should we ask for any other questions regarding the topics we've covered so far, or we move on? If any questions, raise hands or just switch your camera and mic on. Okay, so I would say, Matyas, following to Son of Saul, your second collaboration with Laszlo Nemes came in 2018. Was released the film Sunset? Was in Sundance in 2017, something like that.
I'm horrible with the dates, so I don't know. I can check on IMDb. It was yeah, it was a few years, probably 18. But let me just quickly. I don't want to.
Hi, Pratik. I see Pratik is online. Hi, thanks for joining us. Well, Matthias, I think it's around that time.
2018, yes.
2018. So, first of all, I'm curious, we never talked about this. How was it on a general level? You guys, as a couple, came from a huge success. How this affected the preparation of this other film, and more in general, your career?
My career, yeah, we can talk about that. I mean, it was a great thing because if I compare the two films, Son of Saul and Sunset, what was great with Sunset, that it was a first feature. Nobody really had expectations because nobody knew who we were together as a team of filmmakers. So we had we were alone basically, and that was really great. And the was super small, and we were like, okay, just do your thing, and that gave us an extreme amount of freedom that we needed to do something, you know, you could say as progressive or whatever as it was. And with the success of Son of Saul, what was great is that it gave us the opportunity to do Sunset, and because of the success, we again felt that we are left alone. You know, we are like, nobody wants to tell us how to do our jobs, and nobody wanted to tell us what to do because we just came out of this experience. But obviously, what we had and what we didn't have with Son of Saul, or we had it in a very different way, was pressure. You know, with Son of Saul, it was a huge pressure on Laszlo because this was his first feature film. So he needed to prove himself as a filmmaker. With Sunset, the pressure was very different because the pressure was, okay, after the success of Saul, like, what is the follow-up? So it was a very different sort of pressure. And the pressure was there, and the pressure was pressing. But it's, it's, I think you just have to treat it in a way where it doesn't block you, but it just gives you power and gives you inspiration, and that's what we tried to do. And it was difficult, and it was a much bigger production than Son of Saul, and it was a much bigger production than anything both of us have done before, obviously. So yeah, it was tricky in that sense. In terms of your second half of the question was regarding my career. I don't know. I mean, of course, having a film that won an Academy Award is happening. I'm still waiting for the phone calls from the directors I love and admire, saying that they want the guy who shot Son of Saul because they love that approach. So sure, we'll see.
So we should say something about Sunset, presenting a bit the film. For reasons personal, because I travel, I didn't have the chance to see it in a movie theater, but I really enjoyed the opportunity you gave me by sending me this private link on Vimeo. Story-wise, what can we say? How can we tell Sunset? We shouldn't tell, because the film must be watched. But it's interesting, there are some traits, both in the story, again, it's a period film, and what would you say about it, story-wise, without, of course, just if you would define it, how would you define it?
I think what is extremely beautiful about Sunset is how multi-layered it is in terms of story and storytelling. It deals with so many things simultaneously, so many ideas simultaneously, that I find it very rare in other projects that I read or I watch. It tries to give you almost like a holistic idea about an era that is a very specific era in the European history. And it's also something that is, I mean, whenever I think about this film, even though it's a period film, I find it extremely contemporary, because I think it is dealing with many things that are very current in the world we live in today. So it's a very complex, I should even say, it's not just complex, it's also a very complicated film. And it's a very rich film in terms of the themes that it's dealing with. I don't want to get into like,
yeah, of course,
talking about the story, because the story is one element, but what I love about it is the multi-layered structure it has.
There were any changes in the way you work with Laszlo, both in pre-production and in production, as compared to Son of Soul, apart from what you just said, the expectations, and of course, maybe a bigger budget?
A key element that was different, which was I wasn't able to operate the camera on this one, because the production was so big that I just couldn't divide myself that much. I couldn't operate these very complicated, choreographed shots and light, and deal with pre-lighting and all of these elements. So we had our friend who helped us out on Son of Soul as well, Viraj Singh, who's, I would say, he's probably the best operator in Hungary right now. He's also a cinematographer himself. He makes really beautiful films. He's been a close friend, and he was an amazing collaborator to work with. His energy on set is amazing. He totally gets what we are trying to achieve. He gave us really good ideas for solving issues we were dealing with, and took the pressure off of my shoulders to divide myself between pre-lighting and lighting and operating and rehearsing and all of that. So it was a great way to do this film. And that is something I wouldn't say easily, because for me operating is like making the movie. So it's very, very difficult for me when I'm not operating. So but the experience turned out to be a great experience, and I was very, very, very happy with what he gave us. So yeah, I guess for me that was the biggest difference. Besides the fact that it was a much more complex and much more difficult production, and much bigger in terms of crew and shoot days and all of that.
So no, because
Vince, can I ask?
I believe that. Sorry, I believe that, and I believe that you love to be in camera, and it's interesting that you are saying this. Also, for instance, I'm in India. This is a country where the cinematographer is always in camera, while in Europe we have a different tradition. I mean, traditionally we always had the operator, and now things are changing. But it would be interesting to know, because it has your brand, it has your mark, this film. I mean, watching Son of Soul and this, I didn't know, for instance, I found out about operating when you told me this morning. And but it's interesting for me to ask you, and for us, I believe, to listen, how do you work with Laszlo, or also with this latest director with whom you have a film who just ended post-production, The Nest? How do you work in the decoupage? What is your involvement in designing the shots? Can you tell us something about it?
Absolutely. I mean, with Laszlo, it's very, very specific. Like, he basically creates his own shot list. And he is extremely precise in planning on what he wants to see in a given shot. Also, the way he creates his films is a way where every shot is interconnected to the next one. So he's not just designing shots, but he's already designing the edit, because the way, when one shot ends, the next shot begins, and there's no coverage. I mean, there's no, we shoot these moving shots with all these characters, and we never really do coverage for anything. It has to be, the timing has to be perfect, the rhythm has to be perfect, the shot has to be perfect to what he wants to achieve. So in both films, there was an initial plan for all the shots that was done by him. And then we sit down, go through this plan on paper first, and then say, okay, well, we want to start here and then go here. Are there any technical issues there, or are there any, is it going to be too long, or is it going to be too complicated, or is it really achieving what we want to achieve? We go through all of these and adjust. And then, of course, on the day, we do a quick blocking rehearsal and see that if the ideas that are on paper work or not. 99%, we only had to adjust a little bit, and then we just shot what we planned to do. So Laszlo is extremely precise and extremely well prepared on in every element, and these shots and scenes we do are super complicated. So if you, for example, if you look at the first shot, so that already involved all of our extras, exterior, interior, almost 360 degrees, we see everything. So it was an extremely complicated thing that was pre-planned to the last bit and rehearsed and then shot. And it was the same with Sunset. We also do like a pre-shoot with a DSLR just to see, like the time it takes to go from A to B, and like we want to be as prepared as possible. With Sean Durkin, whom I worked with, who I did my last feature with, called The Nest, which we finished 2018 and was premiered this year at Sundance. His approach is totally different. The way he works is we basically walk on the set with the understanding of what the scene needs to be, and he kind of walks around and then picks a spot and looks at the scene, and then I stand next to him and I'm like, okay, from here where we are, this looks really, really good. So let's put the camera here, and basically we go shot by shot with him on the day, on the location. And of course, there are certain sequences that we have to pre-plan, which are more technically demanding, and we need certain things, like special things for those. We know about those, but most of the time we kind of come up with the shots on the day, which is also great. It's a very different approach, and I enjoy this just as much.
Okay, and Viraj, you wanted to ask something, I think.
Yeah, on the same. Actually, you asked half the question, and it was my question is more on like on the same topic. Could you give some, because I guess, I mean, this new film looks totally beautiful, and it looks like everything came together really well with all the look and the colors and the walls and the costumes and lighting, obviously all that stuff. So maybe you can give some, some real world tips and maybe some anecdotes about specific communication tools you have. So that seems to be what I think must be very, what I know is very important. So that's something we all struggle with. How do we communicate what's in our head to somebody, tell them what to do, tell them what we want, or guide them to what we think is right. You know what I mean?
Are you talking about specifically director DP or DP crew?
A bit of, I guess the question is a bit of both, because sometimes a director might not, it's a sensitive thing, right? You don't know.
It's a very sensitive thing, and I think for me, it's like that is the key to filmmaking. Like, how do I find a way to communicate with the director so I am sure that I'm making the film that he wants to make? That, for me, that is the essential question in what we do. Because I feel that if there is miscommunication, if there is anything that wasn't explored beforehand, it just creates a ticking bomb for the shoot. And my job is to try to avoid this as much as I can. And that makes me want to put a lot of effort into prep and a lot of effort into communicating with the director. And I've been blessed by amazing directors to work with. And what I found is key to these collaborations is a shared taste, a shared aesthetic, a shared view of the world. I think that's crucial, because if there is a misalignment between us, DP and director, meaning what I find beautiful is something that the director doesn't find beautiful, and vice versa, then there is a massive issue, because then I find myself second guessing my choices, because although I love what I see, but I know that this is not what the director likes, then I'm trying to guess what he likes and creating images that I'm not necessarily fully behind, because again, these things are going against my, I don't know, sensibilities or whatever you want to call it. And I find that a big issue, because then I think my work is compromised, because I can't fully, offer these images to the director full-heartedly, because because I have something else that I would rather do. So when you're lucky enough to be working with directors whom you share a certain worldview or aesthetic or whatever you want to call it, I just adore those occasions, because then I know that I can, do my 110% and give them all I have, because I know that what I love and what makes me excited would make them excited. And and in those cases, it's when you are able to achieve that mutual understanding and being in sync like that, I feel that it's when the best work is created. And that is what I mean by, by doing all this work in prep and making sure that we are on the same page. And when the director tells me that he wants to do something dark, that I know exactly what he means by dark, to understand that, okay, I can actually go extremely dark and not see the actors, and and that's a huge thing. And so I find this to be pretty much one of the most important elements of what we do is to make sure that we are on the same page. And if we are not, then it's obviously it's a different ball game, because then it's all about putting out fires, like, oh, actually, oh, when you said you want to go dark, I didn't think that you actually want to see them fully lit. To me, that doesn't mean dark, but now I understand what you mean. So let's in an 18K through a, you know, diffusion, and now you see the, you know, like I think it's you want to avoid these situations, because then the director feels that he's not getting what he was after. So it's yeah, I think it's all should happen in the prep.
And some of the things that you're doing that you can prep, obviously looking at photos, paintings, other movies.
Yeah, of course, like
a couple of beers, couple of drinks,
whatever it takes.
Yeah.
It's just make sure that, you know, sure, you use whatever you use at the movies, or use photography, or use whatever you want to use to make sure that you understand what dark means for the director, for example, or what beautiful means to a director, you know, like all of these things.
In this sense, I think it's interesting to relate also to the issue of monitoring on set. Like, now we know that you shot both films on film, of course, on the 19, which is basically 500T. And I was curious to ask you about, first of all, I have to tell you, I love the way Sunset is shot. I mean, I love Son of Soul as a movie, but Sunset really, really captured me yesterday, even if I was watching through streaming and issues on Vimeo. I really hope to watch it soon in a movie theater. What I wanted to ask you, the issue of monitoring. How were you monitoring the image on set? Since we're talking about the relationship of the director, many times now we live in a digital, when we shoot digital, we have the issues of monitors being calibrated, the LUTs that you choose, but then they have to be baked into the proxy files, in this and that. Tell us from this experience, what was the monitoring or the video assist that was happening there, and then if you can tell us also something about this beautiful low key that I find absolutely fantastic that you had on her in the interiors or in the nights going into silhouette. I would be very pleased to hear from you about this.
What I also enjoy tremendously with the film workflow is that it's only you who know what you are getting.
Exactly.
I love that, because you know, you make your tests, you know your exposures, you know where you want to be with certain things, and you show this to the director, and you fine tune it until the director is happy, and you know where you want to be. You know your values, like, okay, this is where I want certain things to be, and then you have this little knowledge or little secret you carry, like, this is how the film is going to look. And if you look at the monitor, obviously that's not our film, so forget about that. That is only for framing. And that if the director understands this, then I think you're in an amazing position, because he's not gonna question you about, oh,
but
why,
in
you know.
that sense, I would say that the director must understand that. Maybe it's tougher for him to understand the LUTs or whatever is happening. You know what I mean, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and yeah, he or she must understand that what we are getting. Absolutely. And then
no, in the sense, Matthias, I meant he must understand that the video assist is not the real thing. While
of course, absolutely. And if you have that understanding, that you're in a great situation, because if you do what you set out to do, then your results are going to be the results you're after, and everybody's going to be very, very happy.
Surely.
I just love the workflow. When you're shooting digital, yes, there are 200 monitors on set, and everybody has an opinion, and everybody comes and adjusts certain things that you didn't want to be adjusted. And obviously we need everybody's work to create what we are trying to create, but we also I think that we should be the person who has the most understanding of what the image should be, what the final image should be of a film. And I fear that the less input I have, it's not necessarily true. It's just great to be in full control of what what we are doing, and film gives me that control. That's for sure.
For instance, this is such a beautiful image. Now, no, it's also the fact that it takes some pre-visualization skill. Now, the problem also what I say to younger or to my assistants, and from my very little experience, and I don't consider myself too old, but is don't light through the monitor. Try to use your eyes. This thing of lighting through the monitor is a disaster by any standards, and I see that happening a lot, and it's a very, very bad habit. You don't learn exposure by lighting to a monitor. And I think it's very important to stress this concept and to use a light meter, guys. Even if you're shooting digital, we were saying that yesterday, we always have a light meter to check your highlights, to have proper or shadows, to have proper information on what you're getting, and most of all to communicate to your crew, because the crew has to know that you want that 2 stops under, that you want that 3 stops over. That's how you create photography. So don't get into bad habits. This I feel to say. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think even if you don't like shooting on film, or you're not planning on shooting on film, understanding the thought process and understanding the workflow and understanding how an image is created on a piece of celluloid, I think is extremely useful in every sense. But I think you know more about this than I do. But I really think that yeah, is key, no matter what you do.
So at this point, I'd like, before showing a few more caps from Sunset, I'd like to know if there is any questions from our friends who are with us here on Zoom session. I don't know about Facebook if they're writing, because I can't check too many things at once. But you guys have any questions on what we've discussed so far, or about this, or anything else? Antonino, Ashwin, Enzo, Ezra, Faizan, Julia.
I have a question. How do you go about convincing your producers to shoot on film? Is there suppose me and a director wanted to do it. What's a tip you can give?
I mean, in these last 3 projects, I didn't have to do any convincing. It was in all of those cases, the director said that we are shooting this on 35, end of conversation, thank you so much. That was it. It was, the line producers, getting quotes from the rental house and from Kodak and from the lab and from post, and making those numbers work. It wasn't about we were in a very, very lucky situation where we didn't need to convince anyone. It was the decision of the director that I obviously wholeheartedly supported, but it was there wasn't even a discussion. It was just, okay, now we have to make these numbers work. So they did. And it's interesting because it's the budgets we're talking about, Son of Saul was less than $1.5 million. It's a period film with built sets, with a lot of extras. We shot for 26, 27 days, I'm not sure. We could still make it work, and we actually came under budget, meaning that the amount of film stock we asked for, we didn't use. So, and it was pretty similar with the Nest. You know, Sean wanted to shoot this on film, and I was extremely happy about it, and the producers were extremely supportive. So we didn't. It wasn't like we had to, you know, we had to convince anyone. So yeah, we were in this very, very lucky situation, and these producers were, you know, smart enough to support the filmmakers and say, well, if that is your artistic choice, then we're gonna support that, and it's beautiful.
Looking at this image, Matthias, this is something that recurs as part of the style that you established for this film. So you have this use of tungsten light with a, say, bright, so you create contrast with the day exteriors, basically. With the day, it's very interesting. Can you tell us something about this topic? We go a bit into this.
There are a lot of visual ideas in this film that are used throughout, and one of these idea obviously is contrast. Contrast not just in terms of you know, bright against dark, but it was also contrast in color. It's a theme that goes throughout. You know, there's a contrast between day and night, which is extremely important in this film. Whatever happens at night versus whatever happens during the day. So we, you know, we were talking a lot about this idea, and then without like overthinking it or without like overemphasizing this, the blocking of these scenes were designed so we would be getting images like this.
This scene, for instance, is very bold, very brave. I love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's you know, it was, you know, something that we knew we're gonna be exploring. I mean, there are interior shots. You actually pulled one still up recently that was like super high key, super high contrast. The exterior, she's standing in the shade, she's silhouetted against this out of focus. Yeah, I mean, this was the idea that Laszlo had. Like, okay, this is the film I want to make. Beautiful. So like, and I love it because it's like, of course you can feel this or lighter, and that, but the idea was that we are, you know, there are two worlds that are clashing. One of them, if you want to like super simplify this, one of them is the world of the night, whatever that means, you know, the subconscious. But again, like, let's not spoil it by naming it. But like that is those are the ideas behind the video.
And I'm sure that then after you do it, you catch all the layers that you put into that without thinking too much. I mean, having ideas, of course, but it works like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, you all, you know, like, these conversations guide you about, you know, locations and blocking, and all of these choices are, you know, go back to these, or, you know, like the original conversations we had. So it's I feel it's like a very organic with Laszlo, it's always like a very organic process of how an idea becomes something, you know, idea becomes an image. With him, it's a very organic process, because all of the elements that build an image go through multiple conversations, and all those conversations are guided by this one original core idea.
This was magic hour.
Yeah,
very much at the edge. So also with 500T you manage, right? Because now there is this also marketing about ISO, right? About exposure index, about this is 500T.
Yeah. Nice. It's 500T, and it's, I mean, every single time I shoot film, I'm amazed by the beauty and by the detail you're getting. And it's not just an image that is there, you know. It's not like, oh, I can see it. I don't care, you know. It's an image that is somehow extremely beautiful and passionate and sensitive. I don't know how to put this in words, but it's an image that feels very touching in a way.
Now, I wanted to ask you something specifically in your work in preparation. Speaking of which, since we're going there, like, okay, when you go into a night, you ask yourself, how is the night lit? So, what was your approach to a night lit at the beginning of the last century in Middle Europa, in Central Europe?
Yeah, it's this question kills me every single time. Like, how do you light night? It's because it's tricky. I find it extremely difficult. So my approach is always to rely on some sort of a source. Because if I don't have a source, then I feel I'm totally lost. But once I have a source, then I can, you know, work around it and make that work a little bit. So yeah, I always try to imagine a source or incorporate a source into an image at night. So yeah, I mean, if you want to use this as an example, of course it's lit by these 4 street lights, but it is not. I mean, there's a huge softbox hanging in the air that is dimmed way down, and it gives you this soft over the.
No, but it makes perfect sense. But I think it's interesting, this one, because you have the source clearly, and also you incorporated this silhouette in the left, so you manage really at the edge to create that contrast and depth. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. No, also my question was, yeah, how much you have to be like, say, or you feel to be like naturalistic in the sense they were lighting like this, and how much you can take, say, of liberties. This is a
my approach is, funny enough, is very, very much, I mean, what I'm trying to do is trying to be very true to what would be realistic. So of course you can't light a scene with one candle if it's a massive night exterior, but I'm trying to, my thought process is always based on reality. I need to base my lighting choices in reality. So if you look at the work of Robert Richardson or Janusz Kaminski, or all of their choices are, what is the right word? It's stylized. It's very, very much stylized. I don't think I'm any good at that. I need to understand where the light is, what is the source of the light, and what are the light sources that were around and available in that given time and era. So yeah, I need to rely on all this knowledge of what was there in reality.
So guys, is there any other question that you don't be shy, huh? We made it in spite of coronavirus and Facebook.
I wanted to ask something, Vincenzo.
Please go ahead, Shubrio.
Yeah. So your choice between digital and how do you say film? How much is it era specific? Do you think that era, like the era that you are shooting the film about, also dictates a lot of your choices that you make between digital or film? Let's say
it does affect. It does affect. I don't think it's the only thing. I mean, I can totally see myself shooting a sci-fi movie on anamorphic 35 or 65 mil or whatever. I mean, it has been done. I mean, Hoyte just did Ad Astra on this format, and it's amazingly beautiful. I don't think that something that is taking place today is digital, and something that takes place in the past necessarily needs to be on film. Although, if you think about, I mean, I would probably, I mean, to be honest, I would probably pick a film for both. But obviously there are projects where I would pick digital for certain for a certain quality.
Good. Any other question, guys? Sorry, I have a bit of multitasking here.
Before we go, could you talk a little bit about some of the things you're doing in this time to keep yourself inspired? What you're watching, reading, what you're doing, just like.
I'm reading a lot. I'm reading a lot of great literature. I'm trying to watch movies, and I'm running, a lot. So trying to stay sane. I mean, I guess we are all in the same boat with this. Very few of us are lucky enough to be able to prep something, because this would be like a perfect time to prep a movie. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to prep, which is not great. I mean, I guess, some of us, only a handful of us are lucky enough to be doing that, and most of us are like, trying to stay alive.
And in your normal life, where do you get inspiration from?
That is also something that is extremely exciting to me, to know about other people. Like, how do they inspire? I mean, I would say I'm like pretty much as everybody else. I'm turning to art to get inspired, from theater to music, from photography to fine art, to architecture and cinema. This as a package is extremely an endless resource of inspiration. Obviously, traveling and meeting people and this discussions like these are really good. And people that are not my age, listening to their questions, it gives me new ideas, and it's so interesting to listen to these questions. So I mean, I guess you would do the same, no? I mean, Viraj, you would do the same. So you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Maybe there was something.
No, I wanted
special.
to. Well, you're not prepping anything. 1 second, sorry. You don't have anything prepping, but you have a film that is basically will be released as soon as we go back to normal life, right? You want to tell us something about The Nest? Was your first movie in Hollywood or in the US?
It's not an American film. It's my first feature film with Sean Durkin, a really, really good friend and an amazing filmmaker, who I had the chance to work with on a series in the UK many years ago, and this is our first film together. It's called The Nest. It stars Jude Law and Carrie Coon, and it was one of the most amazing experiences ever for me. The making of this film was an amazing crew, amazing producers, a beautiful script. I mean, the rare occasion where everything is just happens, and I love the film. It's a really beautiful film about a dysfunctional father figure in a family. It takes place in the 80s. We shot in the UK mostly, and we shot a week in Canada. Canada stood in for upstate New York. And it was premiered at Sundance this year, and it's gonna be released later this year, hopefully when the madness ends and we go back to some sort of normalcy.
So maybe, Matyas, to close this talk, I mean, I have to thank you again because it's been now 2 hours and a half, very pleasant, and it's a pleasure to see you, even at distance. And thanks, really, thank you so much for your time. And no, I wanted, I think what you said, that is, let me finish 1 second. What you said, I haven't seen the film, of course, I don't have stills and anything, but since you're talking about that, it's the 80s, this makes me think about also, if you want to say something about your relationship with the production designer, how do you work with other departments, maybe starting from this latest experience?
It's funny you ask, because I was having a conversation with an amazing production designer about exactly this. I mean, to be honest, I'm in love with production designers because they can, they are such an important part of making something work. And if the director, production designer, and DP are a team and are on the same page and have again mutual understanding of what the film is, then it becomes so easy, because all of this creative energy and all of the resources are guided into making something together that is, that is basically what the movie is. And if that happens, it's amazing. If there is deviation, if there is, if there's no understanding or misunderstanding, then it can turn into a nightmare. And again, what I said about making sure that you're on the same page with the director, I can just repeat the same thing, copy paste, that you have to be on the same page with the production designer, because again, if you are doing the same movie, suddenly, meaning that the ideas are going in one direction, then 1 + 1 is becoming not 2, but it's becoming 200, because it's like all those ideas are just built on each other, and then you're suddenly able to achieve something that is way beyond anybody's imagination. So I love production designers. I love the collaboration with them. I want to know as much as I can. I mean, just to give you a little example, with the Nest, when we were doing prep, I didn't have a table. So I moved in with the production designer and his team in his office, and I just sat there with them, and everything they were talking about I was able to listen in. I was able to look into what they were using as references, like all the images they compiled. So it was a great way for me to totally be in sync in what they were doing. And some of the films, it's not sometimes it's them who start the first, the work with the directors. So actually you join the team, and you kind of have to catch up and very quickly learn where they are.
I have hi, Rafik, welcome.
Hi.
Thank
you.
You're from India, Rafik?
This is a fantastic. This is a treat. Thank you very much. Fantastic.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. You mentioned that you also shoot digital, but is digital ever an aesthetic choice for you? Because film, I understand, is completely an aesthetic choice. You're facing monumental challenges. There's a shrinking ecosystem, and you persist, and it has huge artisanal challenges as well. But digital, is it ever an aesthetic challenge?
Aesthetic choice, you mean?
Aesthetic choice. Sorry, aesthetic choice. I mean aesthetic choice.
For me specifically, so far, no. That is the short answer.
Yeah.
I never chose digital over film for any project yet. as of now. And I'm not saying I won't in the future. I'm just saying that so far the projects I've been involved with, whenever I had the option to choose film, I always felt that that is the better option.
Yeah.
So, but again, maybe I'm lucky enough that tomorrow I get an amazing project that must be shot on digital because that is the quality we are after. I will be more than happy to do that.
I mean, the greatest compliment a digital film gets is when it starts looking close to film, starts looking close to analog. So the challenge seems to be to shoot digital in a way that it starts looking analog, you know. And
but then why don't you shoot film then? Then it's, you know, inherently there.
Exactly.
So I have to say that.
Okay, one quick short.
Well, no, I wanted to say that in this respect, I think that the most interesting thing done so far was by David Lynch with Inland Empire. That was very interesting. I really enjoyed it because he went for this video aesthetics all the way with no.
Yeah, exactly.
And I suggest everybody to watch this movie. It's incredible. In fact, he never shot anything else after that. He didn't shoot any other movies after that. He reached the. So, but I think that would be an interesting case of video aesthetics, really. Big time.
Yeah. Fantastic. I agree with you. Fantastic.
Sir,
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot.
Sir, thanks for joining us. And
thank you. Lovely
I hope just last one round, I ask if there are any other questions from the people online with us. I don't know about what's happening in Facebook. I don't know. I'm lost in between 4 devices around me. So if you guys have a question, please switch on your camera and your mic, even though I think it was a very nice conversation, I believe, and we went through many topics, focusing on shooting on film. I have to remind you all that this is happening within TDC Cinema. That is our event dedicated to cinematography, young cinematographers and young directors from. Oh, there is another question from Ezra. Please, Ezra, please then switch your camera on and your mic.
Mike, turn your mic on. Turn your mic on.
Yeah, it's on. I just wanted to ask about how, as a director of photography, you communicate with your own camera crew and gaffer. Especially with the gaffer, do you give them a lighting plan before, ahead, or how do you communicate your visual approach to the film or the project to your own camera crew or lighting crew?
Yeah, camera crew. I don't know if I'm not sure if I'm communicating that well with my camera crew. Unfortunately, you know, if it's a feature, obviously we go through several tests, and those tests, you know, like picking the lenses and filtration and all of that. Obviously, they are a huge part of the process, and they are there. But sometimes, you know, I am figuring it out. Like, I'm using these tests to kind of, you know, I have a vague idea and then I narrow this idea down based on what I see in the tests. With the gaffer, it's obviously a very different conversation. I'm just gonna use the Nest, which is my last feature, as an example. I was lucky enough to work with Andy Cole, who is one of the most amazing gaffers in the UK. I had the luck to work with, and he's an amazing gentleman with an amazing team, with a great eye, great attitude, and he is a joy to work with. And again, I don't think I started the prep and the conversation with him knowing exactly what this film is going to be. how it's, you know, what is the look and the mood and the feel I'm after. On the other hand, there were a couple of things I knew that I didn't want. So I was trying to be very open with him and tell him that, you know, at this stage, this is where I am. I'm not sure about many things. I am sure about certain things, and I share those things with him. And obviously, listening to his amazing, amount of knowledge and experience, and I'm trying to get as much out of these lovely people as I can. And the closer we got to the shoot, you know, again based on the few tests I've done, and obviously the conversation I had with the director, I began to see the film and pre-visualize the film more and more in my head. It was a fairly small film. It didn't require us lighting, you know, massive amounts of things. Most of the film takes place in and around a big mansion. So, but we kind of narrowed it down to you know, what is the aesthetic we're after, what are the units that we're going to be using, and we basically narrowed it down. And I know this about myself, that I'm on one hand I'm very, very vague. I'm like, I know this is what I want, something. But on the other hand, I can be very, very specific at the same time. And I know that it's probably not the easiest thing to work with if you're a gaffer. So I remember occasions where, like, oh, okay, guys, let's just, you know, do the big bounce outside, and then we're gonna shape it. And then they do the big bounce, and they come in and they look at it. It's like, oh, okay, now let's push it 40 centimeters to the left, and now give me a flag. No, too low, too high. Okay, perfect. Now, and then I start to get into the, you know, details. So on one hand, I can be very vague, and on the other hand, I can be like, oh, okay, yes, but let's move this here, and then let's move that here. So it's I need somebody who's very calm and is able to handle all this. But I felt that our relationship was great, you know, during the making of the film. So to try to answer your question a little bit more precisely, I give as much information and guidance, if you want to use that word, to the gaffer I can any given moment, but also someone who's I need to be able to change my mind. I need to be able to say, yes, we did talk about having that light there, but actually let's turn it off and let's do something from the other side. And I need to be able to have that flexibility. I don't want to lock myself into a corner and stick to something that we decided, you know, weeks ago. Sometimes
the bottom line is when you like it, it's fine.
Yeah.
No, because it's true. This was a very interesting question, because clearly our crews, these are people who do it with passions. They are creative themselves. So it goes back also to what you were saying before, that this job at the end of the day, it's also about human relations. And you know that these people are there also for their creative needs. So it's a matter of orchestration, right? You find the right measures sometimes how to deal that. But at the end of the day, it's your decision. And this is how you get that decision through. It's the process. It's the journey. It also can be fun. So having said this, once again, I would thank you, Matyas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vincenzo.
It's been very pleasant. And thank you, Viraj Singh, is the newest add-on to the crew of TDC Cinema. Thank you, Viraj. You dedicated a lot of time to this, even in our attempts of yesterday. Sorry for those who missed part of it, for those who are online on Facebook, but I will upload, and we will upload also the full version. I think nowadays Facebook is being used a lot, so there are these kind of issues. I want to remind you guys, for those who are here and those on Facebook, that to follow our website, tdcinema.com, or the page, and you're already there, for the updates on our program, because you can shoot film at TD Cinema. It's a great experience and it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and we want you to come and shoot. Dates will change. It will be March 2021, and all the updates will be there and will be on our Facebook and on our Instagram. Maybe we'll have another of these C2C. Let's see what happens. Maybe will be released, maybe will not. But it was for sure a great start, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.